Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Gianoutsos. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
So in my previous lifetime, as I like to call it, I had a corporate background. I worked in corporate for over 16 years, originally in a marketing and advertising role. That's what I originally studied. But through my own personal journey, I got into coaching and facilitating and training. Very passionate about human behavior and people development. So that's the space I like to play in, as I call it. And it really is around me seeing myself as a catalyst. In other words, holding that space for people, whether it's individuals or teams within organizations, to shift and grow in their journey. And so hence seeing myself as a growth mindset catalyst. And as you mentioned, also a passionate advocate for mental health and wellness, which is very topical, and also gender-based violence.
Okay. Oh, wow. What a background. And thanks for sharing. So tell me, when did you go into the coaching, facilitation and that in your own business? How long ago was that?
So I started off doing it part-time initially in 2009. I trained up it as a imago relationship therapy facilitator and educator, which is primarily working with couples around relationships and relationship dynamics. And then over the years, did additional training. So I'm an NLP, neuro-linguistic practitioner, life coach. I'm also a PDA analyst, trainer, and facilitator, so behavior profiling. And I was doing it in the evenings and the part-time with the view that one day I would do this as my second career when I got tired of being in the corporate world. But as the universe works, when you keep putting something out there, it keeps throwing it in your path, I think, to test how badly you want it or how serious you are about it. So I left corporate in 2014 to go into doing this work full-time.
Yeah, it's interesting how you talk about maybe tired of that corporate world. And I think what we're seeing at the moment as well for a lot of people around the lockdowns and so forth, people are physically, mentally, and emotionally tired. And what was the transition like for you going from that corporate side into your own business? What was it like for you?
I initially struggled. I will be completely honest. Going for a coffee meeting with a potential client or prospect or colleague that I was wanting to build a network with, I felt guilty because I wasn't working. I wasn't at the office. I wasn't at my desk. It's sort of corporate mentality that you have to be in the office and you have to be at your desk to be productive. Not realizing that building relationships is part of being productive. It's part of the journey. So I did struggle initially, but being in corporate also taught me things around being disciplined, particularly in terms of a morning routine and setting yourself up for your day in terms of a positive frame of mind and having that hard start and hard stop to the end of your day, which I think a lot of people now are struggling with, especially working from home, because it's so easy for those personal and work hours to be blurred.
That transition between going to work and coming home from work is no longer there for sure. And yeah, it is quite interesting how that transition between going from a corporate role into your own business is totally different for sure. You mentioned before a couple of things, which we're going to probably, one of them is going to be around the mental health. And we'll talk more about that as we go through our different questions today. But you also talked about holding the space to shift and grow. What do we mean by that?
So when I work with a team or individuals, it's first of all getting a perspective of where are they at right now and what is going on for them and where do they want to go to? And then how do we map out a path that helps them get from point A to point B? A lot of it is to do with support. A lot of it is to do with being a sounding board and also providing practical tools and strategies that I have gained through my professional training, but also that I have applied through my own personal experience that's helped me in my own journey and providing those insights to the people that I'm working with to help them shift and grow.
Oh, great. Yeah, very good. And quite an interesting skill set to have there as well, but also great for people to learn how to shift and grow and move forward into different areas they want to do as well. So here's a question for you. How did you get into leadership?
So I'm of the view that you don't need a fancy job title to be a leader.
Mm,
And I read an awesome book, which I highly recommend. It was Robin Sharma, who he originally wrote the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari.
yeah.
But they don't talk about his other book, which is The Leader Who Had No Title.
Mm,
It was one of the best books that I read because it really gave me insights into, and it's part of the work that I do, that before you can lead in the home and before you can lead in the workplace, you have to be able to lead yourself. And so leadership for me is being able to be proactive, take initiative, constantly adapt yourself to an ever-changing landscape and have a positive impact on the people around you in the process, and also have an open mindset to learning and growing as well.
yeah, what an interesting book, right? Really cool too. I'm glad you brought this up because in relation to the leader who had no title, even some leaders or managers, as I call them, who do have a title, they're not very good at leadership. They don't come across as good leaders. And I know that you just mentioned before something which is really quite interesting around how you lead at home and how you lead in the workplace. But first of all, you need to lead yourself. And I think I've talked in other episodes too before about this as well, but there is no religion, no sporting team, no political party in the world everyone agrees on. But there's one thing that all airlines agree on. Put that mask on first before you help anyone else. And it's going back to exactly what you just said there, right? So you got to look after yourself, be the best you can be, lead yourself, then you can lead other people.
Absolutely. And I think it's also, and I say this respectfully, but I think over the years from a society and a corporate sector, we've made leadership out to be this huge, great thing, this fancy
Mm.
title. And yes, it comes with wonderful perks and benefits. And if you're lucky, a fancy corner office. That was pre-COVID times, right? But if you really look at it, what leadership really is about, it's about working with people, leading people, managing people, and inspiring people.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with having a corner office at home, isn't there? Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good. Hey, Paula, the question I've got for you here in relation to leadership, and it's your favorite leader. Now, this person can be can be alive, or can be from history. But who's your favorite leader and why?
I have to say, and I know some people, it's a bit cliched, but I have to say Richard Branson. And why I look up to him as a leader is, first of all, I think he still keeps his true essence in terms of being a family man, being family orientated. And his family is always a priority, despite the businesses that he's involved in. Second of all, from a business point of view, he stays the same. He remains true to his value system. And it's about creating a healthy environment for his people to grow. He was one of the very first leaders a couple of years ago that introduced unlimited leave for his employees. And everybody thought, oh, employees, they're now going to take advantage of this benefit and they're never going to be at work. And in fact, when they went back about 6 months later and interviewed those employees, all of them said, we feel like we're being treated like adults. We're feeling like we are in control of making our own decisions and what works for us and managing our time instead of being managed. And I thought that was awesome because when you treat people with respect, when you treat people in a positive way and as adults, they will do the same in return. And what they found is people were actually taking less leave than before.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it? So they're taking less leave than they were before because there was unlimited leave.
Yeah. And they felt I could manage my time because I know what's on my schedule. I know what I need to deliver. And I have the freedom of choice to be able to manage my time.
I've had a background primarily most of my life in sales, but over that time, I've got to really understand not only myself overcoming many obstacles and a major transformation I went through 22 years ago, but also really to understand how people communicate and how they lead. And from that, I was able to migrate into coaching, and it's become a passion of mine working with individuals and companies, how to lead effectively by example and be a resource to build more winning, engaging teams, empowering others to own their role and duties in their jobs and so on.
Awesome. And what do you like about coaching in particular?
It's just something I guess it's been born into me. I come from a family of teachers. My mother was a teacher. My aunts and uncles were teachers. I have cousins that are teachers. My mother always said, you would make a great teacher. And I say, I am teaching and I am educating. That's not in a traditional role like a teacher would in a school, but yet I'm doing it as an executive coach. But I also do some adjunct faculty work for two universities in their business program that are non-accredited. So I help them to really help build some value in terms of applied knowledge to businesses that are around where those schools are located.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, coaching is a wonderful thing, and I love doing it as well with people. And I just like seeing them getting the light bulb moment or that transformational situation or that insight that really just changed their lives, their teams, and all their organizations, which is a wonderful thing to see for sure. Hey, Christopher, you talked about you got into sales and so forth. So how did you get into leadership?
Leadership was just something that came natural to me. I've always had this uncanny ability where people would come and open up to me, meaning that they would tell me things that they wouldn't tell their bosses, wouldn't tell their peers, wouldn't even tell their significant others. So the fact that I had this ability probably led, I didn't know it at the time, was that I had this ability to connect where people were. So if people were feeling vulnerable or if they felt incompetent, maybe they didn't know enough, they didn't want to disclose this information to people they work for, fearing they might lose credibility, might lose their job. But yet people felt very comfortable talking to me about that. And because of that vulnerability and transparency, those are two strengths that allow an individual to grow from where they are into everything that they desire to be. I just had this ability to do that and help people move along through being the messenger, being someone that related and understood where they were at and shared from experience, empowering them to take ownership of where they were and where they desired to be to go from there. So I guided them and gave them the blueprint. But first, connecting on shared values, connecting at a place where they felt comfortable, where they could be vulnerable and transparent to start moving forward.
Yeah, that ability to connect with people where they are at is a really, really important skill to have. And I think a lot of leaders nowadays, they're not doing that because they're running, as I said in my introduction, email to email, meeting to meeting, and they're overwhelmed and they're finding it a little bit difficult to be able to do that. But they just probably need to get themselves out of the way and allow them to be there present with people. And I think being present is probably one of the biggest things that a lot of leaders could do today. What's your thoughts on that?
You just nailed it, Dennis. It is about being present. See, if we're going to be effective leaders, we have to be able to lead by example and be a resource. So if we're not being the example of everything that we're looking to do to inspire people that work for us to own their role and own their duties, then all we're going to be stuck in doing is telling people how, when, or why to do something. And when we're not doing it to the level that you anticipate, then it's just going to lead to more telling and more conflict and things not getting done. You're operating from expectations tied to outcomes that operate in the past and future in terms of thinking. So as leaders, we have to be present. We have to learn to think differently in a way to be different, to become different, to do different, and then have different, better results. Well, we can shift away from telling people how, when, to why to do something and share from experience, being that example and being a resource rather than pleasing and enabling others, and shifting our result process into the moment of trusting what we know and what we can control and maximizing that and letting go of everything else and not tying ourselves to the expectations, the outcomes, we'll have far better results and more likely to inspire people through our example and our resources to do the same over time, creating more future leaders in their role and duties.
Yeah, great. Yeah, being the role model or example to inspire people. I love that. The thing is, that's probably quite a good segue into the next question here. And Christopher, this could be a little bit interesting for you in the sense that you've probably got many, but let's just think about one in particular if you can. Who's your favorite leader? Now, this person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
I have so many favorite leaders out there. I would have to say that I respect my wife, number one, because my wife is always the example. I respect Richard Branson is one. And here's why I respect Richard Branson. Because Richard Branson is highly transparent from day one. He knows his strengths. He knows his weaknesses. When you think of that name, Sir Richard Branson, you think that this man could do no wrong. Like he is an expert and he has strengths in almost every aspect of doing business. But he'll be the first to tell you that's not the case. And he's someone that will say yes to something knowing that he sees an opportunity, but yet will say that I don't have all the answers. I've made mistakes. And this is an individual that also leads by example, meaning that he shares from experience. He inspires people on his teams, depending upon what business it is, to take ownership over their role and duties and create an environment that, regardless of title, that people can really grow into their strengths, offset their weaknesses, and create more interdependency in those types of work environments. So he would be one that comes to mind. Another one is Mary Barham from GM. This was a woman who grew up in that old school men's world of running a bureaucratic business. She grew up with sexual harassment and all these bureaucratic things that how companies used to run in the day. And throughout her career, rose through the ranks and was able to transform General Motors to where it is today, where it operates from a place of servant leadership, a combination of servant, visionary, and then also coaching a style of leadership. So it's a completely different environment than it was 20 plus years ago. And so for being a woman leader who I respect highly, she is someone I hold in high regards as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.